My name is Sherlock Holmes. I've always been more of a thinker than a fighter.
The two aren't mutually exclusive.
There's an art to fighting.
There's an art to war.
I think there are multiple moments for both characters that feed into that notion. I think you start to understand that these characters would never become the polished, finished product that we meet in Conan Doyle's works without each other. Yeah. I think for Sherlock, it is the main two would be in episode 5, where he learns the truth about his sister and that she is actually alive. And I just think Silas is such a horrible man. And I think Sherlock's gonna need a lot of therapy to get through. I don't know if he ever will. But then additionally at the very end, the final, episode, Silas's death, even then he takes the control away from Sherlock. And Sherlock puts himself in front of him and says, no, you can't kill this man in cold blood, because Sherlock's got such great morality that he believes that everyone can kind of repent and become a good person. And even then, Silas, uses him as a hostage, and then Silas is the one to kind of make the decision himself. So even in that last dying moment, he takes control, and I don't know how Sherlock's going to live with it. I even watched the series back, and I start to just think, damn, Sherlock has it tough.
Yeah, and for me, I would say, it's a great joy in this character to play him without judgment, and to not to think of him as someone who has a poor morality. I just think he has a different way of looking at the world to Sherlock, and that they both appreciate that it's just a different set of circumstances. That means that Moriarty's had to learn to fight to where he's gotten to in the world, and that he learns quickly that the world isn't fair, and that once you've learned that, there's an argument to say well, if the world isn't fair, what use is there in playing fair? Why should I conform? One of the moments that he probably feels that deeply is that he's done everything that he needs to stay in Oxford, and to continue conforming to the system. He does it. They find out about the scrolls, and they return to Hodge and stuff. But Hodge dismisses him, and I think there's a perfect argument for why that's unfair. And then in episode 7, I think his relationship to violence changes, and I think that kind of shock to the system I think that would fundamentally change your kind of brain chemistry to go through something like that. And I think the scary thing is that he the reaction that he has to that change in violence takes him by surprise, and that he anticipates that he will feel one way, but it's quite surprising to him how comfortable he is with it. And I think once you've kind of learned that about your innate character, it's hard to unlearn it. And I think that's a really pivotal kind of moment in shaping the rest of his life.
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think, personally, I think it's the meeting. I have this theory, it's like inside a pinball machine, right? It's action, reaction. And that if they hadn't met, right, in that lecture theatre after the mass lecture, if they hadn't met, Moriarty wouldn't have taken his path and Sherlock wouldn't have taken his path. Now, I have a multi-season arc to get there. But that inciting incident is the sort of meeting. And then there are other things on the way. So, for example, in episode 2, Moriarty's humiliation. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but his humiliation at the hands of Bucephalus Hodge, I think, becomes a key moment for him. I will never be humiliated like that again. There's a moment in episode 7 when Moriarty does something that, when you see episode 7, people will know what I'm talking about, that when that happens, that's a key moment for him. And for Sherlock as well, there's a bit in episode 8 when he could do this thing, he could take this action, and he decides, I'm going to stand on the side of what is right. So there's all these moments along the way, but I don't think it's one thing. If you had to bring it down to one thing, it's the fact that they met at all that set them on these paths. But I love this idea for me, and it's just a playful sort of idea that in my head, if they hadn't met, Moriarty would have become a maths professor, and I don't think, and the shock horror to the Sherlock fans, Sherlock would have become the great detective. He becomes the great detective as a result of things that happen as a result of meeting Moriarty. So that sort of pebble in the pond idea was something I was just really interested in exploring.
I love that she says that our motivations.
I'm also very interested in whose motivations you mean when you say grief. And
You're both motivated by grief in certain ways.
And duty?
And you're both motivated by duty. And it's just completely different though, because one's motivated more by grief in an anger way, and the other one has thrown themselves into duty for the country as a way to escape their grief.
Very nice. I like how you phrased it. I give you some 2 thumbs up, and I like to add on that because Aaron, for me, grave is something that is very difficult to play as an actor.
It is.
So let's find an easy one to play with then. Let's make grief the history and the legacy and the background, the layer, the rich soil. But then we find something that easy to enter the character, which is motivation, action. Let's say, what do I want? It's something, my desire, put in there. That's like pairing together with grief got me excited too.